What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma. Been playing and enjoying some Borderlands 2 VR, and for today's video, I figured we could go over some of the skill changes that were introduced for Borderlands 2 VR. Now, a lot of these skills were changed or reworked to complement Borderlands 2 VR's lack of co-op and the new BAMF time or slow motion mode. Originally, I thought about ranking these in a list. However, since I haven't played through every character to level 50 and used literally every changed skill yet, I figured it would be a better idea to simply go over and talk about the changes we're seeing and what I think of them. As always, if you have any additional insights you would like to add, feel free to include them in the comment section below. Otherwise, let's just go ahead and start with some of Maya's skill changes and go over what is actually a brand new skill in the form of empathy. Now, if you're familiar with Maya's skill tree in regular Borderlands 2, you'll know that empathy is replacing res, which was a skill that allowed Maya to revive other players from a distance in co-op play. Given Borderlands 2 VR is single player, that wouldn't have worked, so Gearbox put a skill in that depletes half your health and deals damage based on how much health you lost. Now, damage-wise, or at least from what I can tell, empathy seems to deal about 4 times the amount of health you lose in damage. I'm not sure if this damage scales as you level. Say, maybe you're like level 30 and it suddenly deals 5 to 6 times the damage. But with the character you're seeing in the gameplay here, I managed to pull off about 4 times the amount of health lost in damage. I guess the real question is, do you want to give up a skill like Converge, which has good synergy with Chain Reaction and Ruin, or do you want to be able to hit hard with Phase Lock and use Empathy and lose a little bit of health? It's up to you, but at the very least, seeing a skill be reworked this way is pretty cool. This brings us to Maya's second reworked skill, which is Quicken. Quicken is a skill that normally improves the cooldown rate of Phase Lock. Much like the original game, you're still getting the 6% boosts to cooldown rate per level, which yields up to 30% at 5 out of 5 in the skill. But for Borderlands 2 VR, you're also getting 3% BAMF time cooldown per level, which yields about 15% at 5 out of 5 in the skill. Quicken has always been a pretty good skill to help reduce the cooldown times on Phase Lock, as the bonuses received from this skill are definitely noticeable. The BAMF time cooldown rate bonuses aren't necessarily bad either, since it's an ability you're going to be using fairly frequently, so in general, I would say if you're playing Maya and you're going to be going into the motion tree, you may as well pick up this skill. As for our final Maya skill, Backdraft has also been reworked. Now, this skill was pretty popular to use with Backdraft builds, where the player equipped a transformer and a shock slowhand shotgun from the Torgue DLC to temporarily deplete and quickly recharge the transformer, which triggered Backdraft's Fire Nova. Given that the Torgue DLC isn't included with Borderlands 2 VR though, Backdraft's use case this way is limited. However, the advantage now with Borderlands 2 VR is that upon your shield depleting, you gain an additional 0.5 second duration to your BAMF time the next time you use it, achieving upwards of 2.5 seconds with 5 out of 5 in the skill. This is actually pretty good, as BAMF time on its own is pretty powerful, and improving the duration of it is always a good thing. I would imagine if the DLC ever got added to Borderlands 2 VR and you were able to get a shock slow hand, you would basically have a constant BAMF time increase due to the constant triggering of those Backdraft Novas. Ultimately, I'd say the changes here improve Backdraft for the better. All we need now is the Torgue DLC, and we should be good to go. Okay, so let's go ahead and move to our next character, which is going to be Axton, and let's talk about this steady skill. The changes for this skill are pretty simple, as the bonuses are basically the same. However, upon activating BAMF time, the bonuses provided by Steady are essentially doubled, and as you might guess, this works really well with Torgue, TDR, as well as any other weapon that benefits from boosts to grenade damage bonus. Not to mention that all regular and more conventional weapons benefit from the recoil reduction, which is great in conjunction with some of Axton's other skills like Metal Storm. I also think what's great about this is, unlike Battlefront, you don't need to have the turret active to make steady work. And really, as long as you have BAMF time mode active, you're going to be getting a higher bonus than what you could achieve with Battlefront. So, depending on how you spec, it might actually be better to go with this skill due to how BAMF time's cooldowns are usually shorter than the cooldowns on Axton's turret. If you ask me, this is a good change to what was already a great skill. This brings us to Axton's second skill change, which is to Able. So, Able has always been an okay skill on Axton. The health regen is nice since you get it for simply damaging enemies, and provided you're in the thick of combat, that additional health regen can be useful sometimes. However, the new change is that Able now improves BAMF time by 0.25 seconds per level, which ensures that you're always going to have a BAMF time increase. After all, I think you're going to be hard-pressed to find yourself in a situation where you aren't damaging enemies in this game. Able should also go pretty well with some of the aforementioned tweaks and improvements to Axton Steady too. Able should ensure that your BAMF time lasts longer, which means you can keep that double bonus from Steady longer too. So, if you're going half gorilla and gunpowder for your build, it might be a good idea to at least pick both of these up. In my opinion, this is a pretty nice improvement for Able and actually makes it a bit more useful. As for Axton's last skill, it's Resourceful, and the changes to it are sort of underwhelming. Like Maya's Quicken, Resourceful hasn't really changed all that much, except for the fact that you now get a 3% boost per level to the cooldown rate for BAMF time. It's a nice change, however, I'm not entirely sure if it's quite as good as the other two changed skills on Axton that I just talked about. Despite that though, Resourceful is still a nice skill. If you combine it with Sentry and an Engineer class mod, you should be able to get your turret cooldowns very low. Add on Gemini, and you can quickly redeploy your complement of turrets faster and ensure that they stay out longer. So, while the changes to Resourceful aren't as exciting as some of the changes to some of Axton's other skills, it's still a nice touch and doesn't diminish from the current quality of Resourceful. This brings us to Zero and what is one of my favorite skills from Vanilla, which is OSOC. While OSOC is not as powerful as Critical Ascension, the skill is still great for compulsive reloaders like myself, as it boosts the damage of the first shot that you fire. Alternatively, if you're someone that likes to use infinity pistols with Zero, OSOC is a must, as it basically ensures that you're going to achieve that damage boost all the time, as you are always firing the first shot with the infinity pistol. As for the specific changes though, OSOC's gun damage bonus of 12% per level is the same. However now, and upon activating BAMF time, you'll get an additional 6% bonus per level. This means rather than achieving 60% before at 5 out of 5, you can now achieve 90% at 5 out of 5 as long as BAMF time is active and you're firing the first shot in a magazine. I imagine this is going to be a pretty fun skill to use with infinity pistols, as you're basically ensuring you're getting a double damage boost while you're using BAMF time. At the end of the day, it's not the most sophisticated change, but it's nice and certainly improves the skill. Now, we'll go ahead and we'll wrap up Zero here by talking about his last two skills that got changed, which are Deathmark and Execute. Both of these skills are largely unchanged from the flat version of the game. However, the change is that both skills now provide the player with the ability to restore 2 seconds of BAMF time provided an enemy is defeated with either of these abilities. So, assuming you apply a Deathmark and then defeat the Deathmarked enemy, you'll get an additional amount of BAMF time, and assuming you defeat an enemy with Execute, you will also get a 2-second restoration for BAMF time. In Vanilla, Deathmark has always been one of Zero's best skills, and once it's paired with Kunai or Death Blossom, you can apply Deathmarks from a distance while Deception is active. As for Execute, it's always been a cornerstone of melee builds. The only sad thing is that I can't get both Deathmark, Execute, as well as Death Blossom and Many Must Fall, as I'd imagine that would be pretty OP. All in all though, both of these skills were already great, though at this current juncture, I'd say that Deathmark may have a little bit of an edge. And now we've arrived at our final Vault Hunter, Salvador, and what is actually kind of a fairly lame skill in the form of Autoloader. Some may disagree, but I've always found this skill to be kind of meh. It's not bad, but all it basically does is allows you to instantly reload the guns that are equipped but not currently in your hands by defeating an enemy. It's nice in the sense that it triggers locked and loaded upon swapping to a freshly reloaded or, I guess, auto-loaded gun, but at the same time, I think I'd just rather spec for Money Shot instead, especially if you only intend to spec enough points into this tree to get the capstone skill. Even with the new alterations that allow you to restore 2 seconds of BAMF time, which is good, I still think I'd rather just save the point and put it into Money Shot, Lay Waste, Keep It Piping Hot, or more importantly, Down and Not Out. All 4 of these skills are much more essential in my opinion, where Autoloader just isn't. Again, Autoloader isn't bad, but I think there are more desirable skills in the same tree. Maybe Autoloader is useful if you use a lot of rocket launchers, but honestly, I just wish Gearbox added a BAMF bonus to some other skill. Alright, so this is going to bring us to our penultimate skill, which is going to be Salvador's Steady As She Goes. Steady As She Goes is a great 1-point skill that's great while you're gunzerking, as it helps to manage the recoil of the guns you're firing while also improving accuracy. The changes for Borderlands 2 VR aren't insanely complicated, but are incredibly useful, as the 80% recoil reduction and 30% accuracy improvement is basically doubled while in BAMF mode, meaning you should be getting a 160% recoil reduction and 60% accuracy improvement while BAMF is active. This should be great on pretty much any weapon type that isn't from Hyperion, and provided it's combined with some fire rate boosts, I'd have to imagine you can make Salvador, who was already the strongest character in the game, even more ridiculous. Overall, this is a pretty good change and is basically a nice little boost to most weapons while gunzerking. Plus, it's just 1 skill point, so if you're going in Salvador's Rampage tree at all, I would highly recommend you pick it up. And for our final skill, let's talk about Salvador's All Out of Bubblegum. This is another skill that makes me wish we had the DLC for this release. After all, achieving a 7% boost per level to fire rate provided your shields are depleted is a great bonus, and obviously, provided BAMF time is active, these bonuses are doubled. So rather than achieve a 35% boost at 5 out of 5, you should be able to achieve a 70% boost, which is pretty impressive and overpowered since enemies are already going to be moving pretty slow already. Assuming you combined this with Inconceivable, you could potentially chain a bunch of shots that don't consume ammo while also achieving higher fire rates. And in general, this is why we need the DLC, and it's also why we need the Rough Rider. Hopefully, the DLC will get added to this game at some point in the future. Otherwise, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you liked this video, feel free to leave a like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more videos, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.